Hey, I'm Kim.
And I'm Pancho, and you're listening to Now That You See It, a show that will ruin you for boring conversations forever.
It's about the invisible stuff that shapes how we think and connect, those, oh, wait, what? Moments that change how you perceive the world around you.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Pancho,
Hi, Kim. How's
we
it
are
going?
here for another episode.
Here we are.
This is a fun topic. We're going to talk about in defense of childlike behaviors and all kinds of I don't know, childhood stuff. But tell us maybe more eloquently describe our topic and what inspired you because this one came from you.
Yeah. Um, the thing that threw up a big red flag for me and made me realize this could be a topic, and now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it, is
Yeah.
actually a LinkedIn post. Spotify in the wake of the aftermath of COVID and everybody going to work remote, there's been this return to office movement, and it's caused a lot of friction in the professional world. It's a lot of strife. People left where they were living during COVID. They moved somewhere else. They started lives. They bought houses. 2.5 years later, their employer is saying, if you want to keep your job, you have to move back. You have to pull your kids out of school. You have to leave whatever new friends, community you've been developing, and you have to move back to the city that our offices are in so you can work in person. And Spotify took the opposite stand. And in doing that, their big announcement was an AI generated billboard image. So you can have AI generate a billboard image that looks like it's a billboard in some big metropolitan, intersection. And it said, our employees are not children. And the idea was our employees are adults. We trust them to be able to work remotely. We don't think that working remotely means there's a diminished level of work. We we think our employees are responsible enough that they have the agency and accountability to be able to work remotely. We're not going to mandate a return to office.
Yeah.
And I actually agree with that, but I did nails on a chalkboard to say that people who can't be trusted, who are not accountable, who will behave irresponsibly if you don't micromanage them are children, because it's an injustice to children.
Hmm.
Children are amazing, right? And so casting them as the bad guys in this message, our employees aren't children. And this parallels what people will say, like, you're an adult. Like, that means something else, right? Like, we have this narrative culturally about being an adult being a good thing and acting like a child being a bad thing. And I want to challenge that because I think it's wrong.
Why, for you, why would it be a good thing for an employer to want its adult employees to be childlike?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the difference between the word childlike and the word childish. So we use the word childish as a derogatory term. I think a lot of the time when we say don't be childish, what we mean is don't be unreasonable, don't be selfish, don't be petty, don't be petulant. And we use childish as a shorthand for that. I don't know that we can rescue the word childish, but I'd at least like to rescue the distinction between the word childish and the word childlike. To
Hmm.
be childlike, what comes to mind is unbridled joy, like really feeling your joy and letting it out, right? It's curiosity. And it's this sincere curiosity of asking how the world works because you don't understand and not having any shame about asking why it works the way it does, not
Yeah.
feeling like it's a stupid question, not feeling like I'm just going to annoy them if I ask them one more question. So it's that curiosity, right? And that curiosity goes hand in hand with wonder, with the recognition that we live in a miraculous reality, and that when we stop to look at things for what they are, instead of just allowing them to fade in the white noise, the background of our lives, everything is wonderful, especially things that are not man-made. That kind of a thing comes to mind. You know, being somebody who's playful, who wants to have fun. All of those things come to mind when I think of the word childlike.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that we could all bear to have a little bit more of that in our lives, including at work. Who doesn't
Totally.
want to have fun at work? Who doesn't want to feel safe asking questions at work? Who doesn't want to show up to work with a sense of wonder about what they get to do today instead of a sense of drudgery about what they have to do today? So I think for employers, that's why it would be important, but also just for people as adults, it's important.
Yeah. And I bet a lot of people, so like, I bet a lot of people can answer, I want to have fun at work. I want to come in and play and like just be curious and exuberant, all these things. But I bet a lot of people aren't so comfortable with the other experience of childlike behaviors, which is the messy, big emotions. Like you think about those toddler tantrums, you think about the big, like, I hate this. And I don't care who knows it. I'm telling everybody. I'm calling you out. I hate this. I'm gonna cry, I'm gonna scream, I'm gonna hit things, I'm gonna throw a fit because you cut the crust off the bread in the wrong way. Or like you peeled my banana. That's part of being a child as well.
Yeah.
So how do we square this circle?
Oh my God. This weekend at the ski resort, I'm gonna have to show it because it encapsulates this perfectly. This weekend at the ski resort, there's a mom with a little boy who's probably 3 or 4, and a little girl who looks like maybe she's 5 or 6. And the mom has her skis. Skis are hard to carry. They're just, and you carry them as a unit, but if you don't carry them right, they come apart. And so mom's got her skis, little girl's got her skis, and the boy's skis are in mom's backpack because they're like a foot and a half long. This tiny little guy. And mom has put her skis up against a column in kind of the rental area of the ski resort because she has to do something with her hands. The little girl sees her mom do that and she goes, I want to put my skis up too. She wants to just emulate, puts her skis up against the column, leans them up against the same place that her mom's skis are leaned up against, and they fall over. And when they fall over, they knock over her mom's skis, and it's a big, loud clatter. Everybody stops what they're doing and looks to see what happens. Mom's embarrassed. Little girl knows she did a bad thing and she just stops and like looks at the skis like, oh no, just kind of like that freeze response. And mom shakes it off, grabs her skis, grabs her daughter's skis. After having finished, I didn't notice what she was doing, and says, okay, let's go outside. Come on. And so she's got both pairs of skis in her hands and she's got the little boy's skis in her backpack. The little boy goes, but I want to carry my skis. And she goes, we're leaving. You can carry your skis once we get outside. And he goes, no, I want to carry my skis now. And she goes, it's not practical to carry his skis, but he just wants to carry his skis because that's what his mom's doing. And he throws a tantrum because she starts walking towards the door and he's not carrying his skis. And so it's not rational, right? But it's fully expressing what he wants and how he's feeling about the outcome when he shared his desire and it's not met.
And biologically, kids of that age it's developmentally optimal that they be as selfish as possible. They have to, and they are. Like the brain of a toddler is uniquely egocentric. It's just like it's just me. Everyone's living in my world. This is my world. You're just living in it. And if things go wrong, it's my fault. And it's so important when kids are small, at any age really, but especially when they're small, to help consistently reinforce like this, you're not a bad kid. This is a behavior. This like everybody makes mistakes, da, 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 because it's so easy for them to, come back on themselves. But in this case, like, this is what it looks like. So my take on this is like, this all happens, this whole like pejorativeness of childlike behaviors happen because very few adults are comfortable with the emotional experiences we associate with kids, and like in ourselves being able to fully feel the feelings of like rage or just like system overload, sensory overload, just, comes out.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that a small child needs to have that kind of like energy vacuum onto them because they need the adult to take care of them. They're helpless. They have to
Yeah.
attract the adult to them. So, what I'm coming around to is the great advantage of our species is that a prefrontal cortex develops at some point, 25, 30, you got your brain online. Along the pathway to that part of the brain developing is also the development of defensive mechanisms, of coping mechanisms, of those fancy words you were using before we started recording. Matt, what was it, Matt? You
Talking
had
about display rules.
display rules. Yeah,
Yeah.
of like what we are supposed to do. So most of us end up in adulthood with a well-developed prefrontal cortex to be able to manage some of the like really not pro-social behaviors, and we are a social species, but not pro-social behaviors that come along with like toddlerhood, along with a whole bunch of coping mechanisms that hide our true selves from us and prevent these true core emotions and core identity from coming out.
Yeah.
So the question, like to you, and like we'll talk about through this episode, is how do you be a functional human with a prefrontal cortex while also embracing childlike living?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm here to talk about that. I'm not
Yeah.
an expert in this, right? The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think we're overcorrecting.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I'd love to I'm here to spitball through this with you. You're a mom. You've done tons of research on this. And I have some takes from a third person, I don't have children, ideological perspective. But I wanted to have this conversation with you to see how they actually stack up against the reality of raising children. The thing that I did want to call out, and I wanted to read it verbatim, is what I shared with you earlier today, kind of the dynamics that I wanted to discuss. Um, and so we'll get to what display rules are, but this is essentially display rules. It's the forming of display rules. So what I wrote to you was that I wanted to talk about the way we teach children to lie and be dishonest in favor of being polite or nice, to stop asking questions because it's annoying, to stop playing and expressing their joy because it's disruptive, and to stop saying what they actually mean because it makes the adults uncomfortable. So it's how we stifle their curiosity, their creativity, their joy and honesty using social pressures, holding hostage love, holding hostage acceptance as a means to compel them. So yeah, that is what I wanted to explore with you.
Yeah. It's fascinating because um I wouldn't have had the words to put this topic together before you did, but certainly not before I became a parent.
Mm,
I think I walked into parenthood like many of us do, with like some pretty highfalutin ideas about what kind of parent I was going to be, um, and really no awareness of myself in terms of how much I had suppressed my own comfort with childlike experiences, emotions, behaviors, and it though like I can see how my kids have experienced like a beautiful, joyful childhood. I can also see how I have put my own shit on them and said like, don't make noise or don't ask that question or in trying to help them be pro-social, think about other people, not be selfish, I send the message to them that they can't honor their own needs unless everyone's taken care of first.
Yeah.
Um, and so which is something that, like, as I've learned more about not just parenting but human development and my own baggage around codependence and caretaking and people pleasing and conflict avoidance. Oh my God. I mean, it's amazing how subconsciously I gave them those messages as little babies, as kids for a long time until I sort of figured out myself. And like, this is an ongoing process. And I will say that there's kids and adults, I believe, thrive in similar environments, firm, demanding, you know, tons of love with boundaries, with other people being able to provide unconditional love to the extent like you've got a in an attachment relationship or in a family relationship, but even just in a community, assuming best intentions, really trying to see the best in people. So
Yeah.
love and autonomy, like let people be what they're gonna be,
Yeah.
but boundaries. Like, and I've watched this in my kids. They thrive not with permissive parenting. They thrive not with anything goes or just like go ahead, be whoever like they need to know where the boundaries are because they need to know that somebody cares, there's some limits, they're operating within like a sort of the world is really big when you're a kid. And if you can like set some like this is how we do what we do and why we do it, but then allow a ton of autonomy and freedom and connection and competence within that and like growth, they thrive. It's really hard to do that, but they thrive. And you betcha I did the permissive parenting thing, following my kids around for a long time before I was like, oh
Mm,
shit, I better set some boundaries because they are losing their minds in confusion and like, what's going to happen if I do this? Like, I don't have, they need that. And I think
yeah.
adults need that too. But we very rarely get the combination of true, like, firm, loving boundaries with autonomy, competence, and connection, which is what we know is part of like well being for adults.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox. And we
No.
rarely get that because very few people know how to offer that to themselves.
Right. Yeah. So I just heard you say this sounds like the magic formula you've landed on, which is through loving boundaries. What is that? Yeah. Tell me more about that. What does that look like? How is it working?
Yeah. So my kids, and this is my kids, but so like it's hard to extrapolate. Um, they, if there's too much constraint in the system, and I really do look at this as like from a systems theory perspective, the pressures, the vents of the system, all this. If there's too much pressure in the system, too much constraint for too long, they can handle it for a while. They can go to like Christmas dinner and spend 4 hours with a lot of people and not have our attention, but there's a limit and they know why they're doing it. But if there's too much constraint in the system pressure, they get they appropriately lose it. And it's like predictable. Like any parent who's been around a kid with has meltdowns, like it happens. Um, and if there's too much looseness, like if we have a day of nothing with no structure, they will similarly lose their mind. So they need structure. Ask me how I learned that. Yeah. I mean, they
Chaos
are
in
kids,
both directions.
and it's the same kind of chaos. And you're like, I can't win. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
middle path is the answer.
Yeah.
You need some structure, but not too much. And they'll resist it. They'll resist the structure. They were like, I just want to build this fort and land this fort all day long. And you're like, that sounds so awesome. Who wouldn't want to build a fort and land a fort all day long? And then you get to 5 o'clock and they are climbing the curtains and driving you mad. And because they
Yeah.
are dysregulated, because they haven't had like gotten out, they haven't just like bounced up against some structure during the day. And so I really in the same way, okay, this is sort of a this is going to be a random analogy, but I think it's apt. My sister had two babies, a couple years apart, 20, 24, 25 weeks, teeny babies, less than a pound. And I watched them in the NICU. They're thriving now. But I watched them, the first one was in the NICU for a year. And one of the things I remember them doing was what they call it, like firm touch. You never touched when you could go in with it, like your hand had to be in a glove. You never lightly touched the baby's skin. You touched the head hard, like firm for like a 1 pound baby, firm, and then like the limbs because it told them where they were in space. It got them used to their body. And it feels like the same thing with how do you help kids thrive? You give them a sense of where they are in time and space and in relationship of like, you're
Yeah.
here. You're here. It's okay. You're here. Play here, but you're here. It's not this big world where they're like, ah. And so it feels like to me, and this is, I mean, they're 9, so who knows? Everybody will be in therapy, but maybe it like will be episodic. Like who knows how it's going to turn out, but what we notice now is that their emotional fluidity is pretty apt. Like it's pretty incredible. They go in, it's big, and they come out usually on their own, usually pretty quickly, which is ideally like when I do coaching, I tell people like the goal isn't to get you in Zen mode all the time. The goal is to allow you to safely experience and let emotions move through you and then return on your own to a regulated state after like the tsunami has come through and like or the fire has come through and like taken out what doesn't need to be there anymore. I don't think many people have that experience in childhood of being in a truly warm, demanding, consistent, secure relationship environment. And so many of us arrive in adulthood uncomfortable with certain emotional experiences, especially when they are displayed by children around us who we have a difficult time individuating from because we're so attached to them and they're basically reflections of ourselves for a long time. And so if some kid is acting like really selfish or really like just or just like big joy, but maybe they're like 12 and trick-or-treating and we're judging the kid who's 12 and trick-or-treating and just like, what are you doing? You're like in middle school now. You don't need to trick it. And they're like, I'm just being a kid or like 14, whatever it is. Because we ourselves have been uncomfortable with like experiencing full, pure joy, we don't often allow it fully in others. There's some part of us
Yeah.
that is tight, that is like,
Yeah.
well, don't da 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 da. Like we're always forecasting the other shoe that's going to drop and then teaching our kids like it's not safe to experience these things fully, let alone teaching them actually how to do that. Because very few of us know how to be like, I'm going to go express my anger in the other room. See ya. Like how that feels. That's my take on like parenting and what's been working for us. But then also I think why that not just works for us now, why we do it so that like these kids as adults will have a richer, more fluid emotional experience that hopefully they're avoiding fewer emotions and emotional
Yeah.
states and can offer that back to their kids or to the people around them.
Yeah. As you talk, I think you're totally right. I I was thinking about this in terms of the way it manifests. So I was thinking about the symptoms of how we interact with children. For example, when kids ask questions, there gets a point at which adults get annoyed. Or I've seen it, and I also have talked to parents about it. The importance of catching your kids' stories. You like send them out into the park, right? And they're blah, 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 and they're playing, and it's been half an hour, and they come back, and they want to tell you about the butterfly, and they want to tell you about this other thing, and they fell, but then they got up and they climbed this tree. The way that they relate to the world is by processing it with an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reaction, the response, the way that the adult catches their story gives them a lot of information about what is an adequate or what is an
Yeah.
appropriate way to relate with the world, and what is a way of relating with the world that just won't be received or welcomed by other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Same with questions. Um, when, like yeah, as a parent or as a classroom teacher, how do you honor the questions your kids bring to the conversation? Those are symptoms. And what you're saying foundationally is, as adults, are we willing to hold space and allow interactions with children in which they bring things to the table that make us emotionally uncomfortable?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we can't do that, then what we're telling them is this is off limits. You should also be emotionally uncomfortable about this. I'm not willing to catch your story. I'm not willing to accept you as you are if you
Yeah.
show up like this.
100%. We were before recording, I was sharing this quote with you that I think about all the time of if you're ever on a plane, you see a baby crying,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you can tell just by looking around at all the other people on the plane who was told to either not cry or where crying was not accepted in their childhood because they are deeply uncomfortable with a child crying in public. And yeah, it's annoying. It's a sound. It's like, I don't know if you know this, but one thing that I had to remind myself when I was parent raising these tiny babies who cried all the time in my face at the same time is infant crying is when they're training army folks and like people in the armed services to withstand torture should they land in a camp, they play crying. They
Huh.
play baby crying
Oh,
because it's biologically designed to evoke a kind of like instant response.
fix
That's like
this.
yeah. So they play it so that you have to and you can't do anything about it. So when I was like raising these kids and they were crying all the time. And even now when they cry, I'm like, right, all right, this sound is supposed to make me, I'm losing my mind because it's supposed to make me lose my mind. It all makes sense. So part of the like airplane thing is like, yeah, it's really evocative to hear a baby cry. But there is another layer underneath the biological that is the emotional discomfort of like, I don't want this to be happening
Yeah.
because I wasn't allowed to have these kinds of emotions, especially if it's not like a cute little baby. It's a 3-year-old. It's a 5-year-old. You should be able to tell me you weren't allowed to cry without telling me you weren't allowed to cry as a kid,
Yeah.
or just be like with that experience. So my gut sense of all of this is there is a way I hope and I wish humanity could be as adults that takes the best of the thinking brain, like who the species we've evolved to be, the prefrontal cortex, the thing that can make the tools and plan for the future, while also dissolving and unlearning the stuff that we had to learn to sort of survive emotionally immature culture, parents, society, and just be emotionally agile, just be like comfortable with other people being exuberant or deep in grief or like have racking sobs sometimes that go away.
Mhm. Yeah. So for you, I'm thinking about this. It's almost like there's this thing to be learned, which we can still learn as an adult. And we might even have to unlearn some other stuff before we can learn this new thing. When you think about, in your experience, what are the things you had to unlearn and learn because as a child, you were given the message, it's not safe for you to be this way? What comes to mind? What does that look like?
Uh, uh, you're not okay if other people are not okay. That was the big one. The big lesson that like it's not, nobody told me that. Nobody was like, we got to make sure Kim knows that she's not okay unless other people are okay. But that's what my nervous system took from these experiences of childhood, among like lots of things, but that really sat with me of I need to be externally oriented for my cues of safety, of love, of of deserving, of worth, and that it's my job to do whatever I can to make sure everybody else is okay, feels good, is pleasant, is pleased, is regulated, and like that's my job. Um, and now I'm a coach. Yeah. So there are skills I learned in that world that have really served me now. But I had to unlearn a ton to be able to be a coach in a healthy way and not be codependent with my clients, not be like looking for them to like feel good all the time or look for the outcome or get really freaked out if they were like a little upset at me. Just to be like, that's where they are right now and like own my part of it and move on. Um, so that was a part of like what I had to unlearn is it's codependence and it's the triad of like people pleasing, conflict avoidance, codependence. And it's allowed me to be so right before this we started recording, I came back from an event and it was a networking event and for a long time I didn't really like networking events and I really thought I was just like a big old introvert and I don't really like talking to people, except I totally do. Like, that's always been true. But what's different is and I walked in the door and I was like, "My God, I feel like I've had 3 espresso, like, I'm so pumped up from this 2-hour event." What's different is that I used to go to those events. I was not myself. And at this event, I was a little silly. I was, like, laughing. I was not super professional the whole time.
Mhm.
Like, I was man-spreading in my chair. I was really comfortable, which is the normal way I sit. Unfortunately, today I'm wearing a dress. But I was like this, evocative, emotive, laughing, like touching people's shoulders. I mean, just like myself, childlike, flowing, fluid. That's not how I've always been. I've been really like cueing in, like, am I saying it right? Am I doing it right? Da, da, da. Now I don't care because the people who I want to be around like that version of me because it's my authentic version and it just takes so much energy to be somebody else. But for the longest time, and this is like really a big clue for me in this conversation, I remember for the longest time being really, really uncomfortable to the point of being like, it's not like, oh, I don't like this, but like people who were childlike, adults who I was like, you're too silly. Like I got baggage still. I haven't really worked this one out around Disney adults.
Okay,
I have to take a
let's
deep
hear
breath.
it. Let's ostracize a small subset of our listenership. It's like one person.
I come from a family of Disney adults. Um,
You
I,
do? Okay.
I, I do. Um, in my like extended cousins and
Yeah.
aunts and uncles and stuff. But like really serious, like multiple trips per year. Like one of them is a travel agent just for Disney for adults because she knows so much. I mean, like, so I have lots of love for these folks. I also don't understand it and have a lot of like when I meet other Disney adults, I don't. There's so much judgment that comes up about like this isn't for your kids. Really is for you. And so there's that. There's just like people who are too like giggly and cute and childlike, and I don't know. I don't know. I also know that I was a kid who was raised to who got like rewarded for being adult like wise beyond her years or like super mature in some cases and just like that's my currency. And so when I see the opposite, I judge, but that just means that the childlike part of me didn't really get to be expressed as a child because I was over here earning currency being an adult as a 7-year-old, you know? So I know that. I just still haven't gotten over the Disney adult. Like if you got
Yeah.
mouth ears in your car, I'm, I'm working on it. I'm working.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That distinction between, which we keep coming back to, the distinction between things we don't like and things that are objectively wrong, and how difficult that distinction is to make when we feel really strongly about something we don't like. We have to remind ourselves that there's nothing wrong with it, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really is just people have the boundaries and they're just being themselves within the boundaries. Just like at this event,
Yeah.
I was being myself and like not everyone's gonna like it, but like I loved it. And just I deeply want to not judge. And I notice the judging in myself when it comes up. And that's where I am right now.
Mm.
Pancho, can I ask you, have you always been someone who has been in defense of childlike behavior, or was there a time when you judged childlike behavior? Like, how have you always been this wise about it? Because I
I
haven't.
don't know that I'm wise about it. I think I'm contrarian about it, but I'm immediately the thing that immediately came to mind is at my old rock climbing gym. They had, and I have to be careful about how they so I say this so that it's like very clear. They had Pride Night, and I thought that was really fucking cool. It was like, sweet, members of the Pride community get to come here and climb with us for free once a week.
Oh,
I
cool.
love that. And my gym in Reno now does the same thing. I think they do it on the first Wednesday of the month, if I'm not incorrect. And there was one person that there was a group of regulars who came, right? And there's one guy who kind of embodied like the loud, flamboyant gay persona, but he was so fucking loud. Like across the gym, and I could hear his conversation clearly.
That would drive me crazy.
It drove me nuts.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing that you're talking about with the Disney adult things, right? It's like there's nothing objectively wrong with it. And as a matter of fact, I was just the saying that completely blew my mind recently, that sorry, the noise doesn't disturb you, you disturb the noise.
Whoa.
So
Same
have I
noise?
shared this with you? Have we talked about
No.
this on the podcast? Okay. If you're the kind of person who likes peace and quiet, and you're having a just like delicious moment of peace and quiet, and then some loud disruptive thing happens and it brings you out of that moment, the noise is not disrupting you. The noise is just sound. Your
Mm.
reaction to the noise is the actual disruption. And so, in that sense, you are disrupting the noise. You are creating the emotional state and meaning about the noise.
Yep, go ahead.
So that's what was happening for me at the gym, right? And I have nothing against the guy, but I do have a something that I'm carrying about when you are in a shared space. And it's not necessarily as much as we were welcoming to the people, like that came on Pride Night. They were new to the climbing gym. They didn't understand a lot of the basic etiquette of being in
Yeah.
a climbing gym. And some of that basic etiquette is actually just about being safe and not having people fall on your head, or not getting the person that you're climbing with killed because you've overlooked some crucial safety feature. So my expectation of them was to conform to the culture there, and they brought their own culture, which was a much louder, much more social culture. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but I had an expectation of, this is how you are when you are in this building.
That's a great example because they're just playing. They're just
They're
being
just
fully
playing.
themselves.
They were having so much fun. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. And their experience dominated because it's loud. Because it's like you can't like turn the volume down or put them on mute. No matter what's happening, their experience is your experience. And like so I'm just gonna say things and like this is my unfiltered self. That drives me nuts of like when somebody decides that their experience is going to become your experience in a communal space, especially when like it's generally like read the room, it's quiet. Uh, for instance, like a great way to like trigger me to Jupiter is to like find me on a beach with your boombox.
Yeah,
I'll lose my mind.
same.
Pitchforky man. So like I can't, I can't excuse or a cigarette. Oh
Yeah.
man, you're dead to me. You're dead
The
to
smell of
me.
cigarettes in public, even if we're outside, I'll immediately look around and like, who is it?
I will throw
Yeah,
the judgment. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So like I get the noise thing
yeah.
in a metaphysical sense, and like in my body sense, I like no, it's disturbing me. Please, I don't want your experience to be my experience. I would like an option, and like my agency in this case is to leave my experience, is to walk away. Or
Mm,
ask you to like speak more quietly because I assume there's also the safety of like if you're just like loud, 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 you can't hear your person at the bottom being like, I don't know what you would say. Problem. Rope's broken.
hopefully not, but yes, you need to be able to communicate with the person on the ground. Definitely.
Exactly. I assume there's a safety reason, but
Yeah.
like what would occur to me first is like, I don't want you to dominate the choice of experience I have, especially anyway. What comes up for you when I say that? Because that's my
Yeah.
hat.
What comes up for me when you say that, and this is again coming back to what we were talking about in terms of display rules. So display rules, and I'm not an expert on display rules. I looked it up a few hours before we had this conversation and did some reading. So I have a very layperson understanding of it. But the idea is display rules are the rules about how you display what's happening on your insides on the
Mm,
outside. And they are rules that are either imposed on you by an authority figure. You can't talk in class or you get detention. Or they're rules that are imposed and agreed upon societally.
yeah,
You don't talk in movie theaters.
yeah.
So I think that they have their place. The way that we engage as a community, as a society, there are rules because those rules help us all engage in that project with some degree of harmony and in a way that makes it feel safe for everybody, or at least safer for everybody to be a part of that project of community, of society. We don't do it perfectly, but that's what laws are for, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
theory. There's also the point to which that can go too far. Um, so I what comes to mind for me is, yeah, there is something to be said about if that guy wanted to be friends with me at the climbing gym, it would behoove him to not be so loud. He might not care about that, right? But that's kind of the kind of thing to think about when you are considering social harmony. How do I
Mm.
fit in as part of the rest of this group? The part that makes me just like furious is parents telling their kids, "What do you say?"
Oh. Yeah.
Hate that question. I might hate that question more than, "So, what do you do for a living?"
Oh, that's something. That's your boombox on the beach.
That's yeah. And it's because if you have an interaction with a kid, whatever they do is genuine. It's fully genuine, right? Even if it's rude by societal norms, it's fully genuine. And and there is instead a demand, like almost a requirement to be performative in politeness. And I think it's if it's not taught correctly, it creates cognitive dissonance for people. I am supposed to say thank you. I am supposed to say please. But what I'm really feeling inside in this moment as I say thank you or please is fuck you. Right? That's not a situation in which somebody's insides match their outsides, which is for me a really important thing to try to figure out as a human being. is how to live in integrity, where your thoughts, your actions, and your
Yeah.
beliefs all match up. So so the way that I think it shows up in adults, and I had to unlearn this, is drawing the distinction between being kind
Mhm.
and being nice, or
Yeah.
being kind and being polite. I think that we do ourselves and the people we interact with a massive disservice by being nice to quote unquote keep the peace.
Yeah, for sure. Oh
So
God.
that's that, that kind of behavior as an adult is where I think one goes too far in the direction of performing the display rules at the cost of honoring how we're feeling, what our experience of the world is, what the actual emotions are that we're holding inside.
What do you do when you get a gift you don't like?
Yeah, I love this question.
Asking for a friend because I have to teach this to my children.
God, yeah. I don't say anything that's not true. And that's not something I thought about until you just asked, but I don't say anything that's not true.
What emotional experience do you dig into to be able to do that?
Yeah, I mean there's definitely conflict there, right?
Yeah.
I've received gifts that feel like a waste of money. I don't like stuff, like knickknacks
Yeah.
and, like widgets. So whenever somebody gives me a widget, um, it feels like, well, this is a waste of resources and money. And now it's going to take up space in my life because at least with people who give me gifts and then are able to determine whether I've kept the gift or not. What I've done in the past is say something about why I think they chose to give me this gift. So there's something about me. There's something about our relationship that led you to buy me this. And I will say I appreciate the thoughtfulness,
Hmm.
the way you thought about giving me this gift. I can tell that you tried to do something thoughtful, even though the gift didn't land at all.
Hmm.
So that's true. Um, I think the there's three things that I ideally would adhere to at all times when I'm thinking about what to say in difficult situations like that. Is it true?
Hmm.
Is it kind? And is it necessary? It's not necessary to tell somebody who just bought you a widget, I hate it. So I try to say something that's true and that's kind. And I try not to say the things that are not necessary to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. We Christmas for neurodivergent kids is a nightmare. Like in so many ways. And
Yeah,
beautiful and
how'd that
exciting and
go?
all these things. We've had a lot of practice. It's not our first rodeo. But it's been hard. It's been really hard in the past because it's nonstop stimulation and expectation and scripts and like a kind of generosity that can feel performative. Like it's just hard to be like, it's the spirit of the season. Like be thankful. And the kids are like, I'm pretty sure the spirit of the season is I get a lot of gifts. Like what is this like witchcraft you're trying to teach me about like, giving away things? But it's also what's coming up for you?
I was just gonna think, like, as a child, are you asking me to be thankful for something I'm not thankful for?
Yeah. So the main like oh boy, this like
Yeah.
explosion is um for differently for both the adults in the house. It's can be differently triggering, but the thing that really gets us is like when the kids express a kind of like rote what's next? What's the next gift? Just like, especially if it's not from, like if it's from a grandmother or like a great grandmother. These people thought about you. This is like, you don't just, this is not just like a buffet train of service to you. You are not the center of the world. Hello. Other people like put time, effort, and energy into this. And especially if it's just like, I already got to this, or like, I don't really like this, or like, I'll never really use this, or wrong flavor, wrong
Yeah.
color.
Yeah.
That'll drive me crazy. And so what we've done with the kids is like, because this is a really hard thing to navigate of like, how do you let them be themselves? How do you not say like, you need to lie about this? You need to perform for other people. You need to have performative gratitude. Like, what a way to kill gratitude. So what we try to, the story I used with them, the analogy I used with them is that like, listen, if you're really into birds and someone finds a bird on the ground and is like, a bird for you, the kid who likes birds, but it's like dead, and they put it in a shoebox and they're like, got you a bird. And you open it and you're like, it's a dead bird. What? To be able to think about like, what's the intention? So this person wanted to match your interest with what they saw. They thought about you. They're really excited. Can you say, thank you for thinking of me? And that's it. And that's it. And just move on and like let that be true. Because what's really happening here is somebody is offering you a like insight into who they see you as, and that they love you and they're thinking about you. And that's it. And then
Yeah.
like we can all talk later about like what felt good, what didn't. Like you can let that out later. But in the moment, just thank you for thinking about me.
Mm. Mm.
But it can be a real, that took us a couple years to get to, and a couple of triggered years of like, what have we done wrong? How is this not intuitively obvious? And like, what's not intuitively obvious is that you have to perform gratitude. That's the taught behavior.
It's so nuanced,
Icky,
right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah, performing anything. I think that's where we get into trouble. Like, I know that the thing I am supposed to do, the thing I ought to do, the thing I should do is blank. And that's not how I feel inside, but I'm still gonna do it. It leads to like empty husks, these like facades of relationships that don't actually have any substance because the people are showing up as pretend versions of something that they're not.
Yeah. Totally. And like, let's draw the distinction between like one of the things you do acquire as you get older is a sense of discipline and like you can, and
Yeah,
perseverance to stick through things
yeah,
that like are hard. Where that can go get twisted is if you're sticking with things because they're hard, because you're supposed to, because like you've been told that you're supposed to do that. If you're sticking with something because you want to be the kind of person who has done that thing, even though you don't really want to do that in that moment, you can, that works. You don't have to be like, I don't know, a quote unquote hedonist who's just like moving from delightful experience to delightful experience and then ending up like, oh, that was sort of an empty life. I didn't really stick with something that I really wanted to do. But what we're talking about here is that is different from that. Like we can let discipline be a thing, a virtue or a value, or at least I'll speak for myself that like if you're working towards something that truly aligns with your soul, there's gonna be hard moments that you just like, have to work through. You're not gonna want to do it all the
mhm,
time. That's different from performative anything because you're doing that to please somebody else, to keep somebody else regulated or happy or put on a show of who you really are or
yeah.
who you are, not who you really are. Does that distinction make sense? Would you add anything to it that like there are some times when you are going to do something you don't want to do and it's okay? But what we're talking about here is finding a way to just be true, kind, and necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to brush my teeth before going to bed. Fucking never. I mean, I think some people probably enjoy it. I think it's the absolute worst, but I do it every night and usually at least twice a day. Um, but I know that it's, yeah, so like that, absolutely do that kind of thing. Um, the thing I kind of want to push back on a little bit, I want to challenge this,
Mm,
is what's wrong with being like, Grandma, I already have one of these. grandma fucked up. She got you a gift that like didn't land. And she's gonna get her feelings hurt. That's fair. But it's also the most honest thing to say about the gift for that kid in that moment.
What would be wrong with asking a kid to acknowledge both are true?
Nothing.
That's where I'm coming from. Of like, you can say it, but like, can we honor the intention?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think most of our listeners, they think people like society in general would be like, "No, you don't say that to grandma."
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the part where I'm like, "Why not?
yeah,
She's 7.
yeah, totally.
Like that let this little person who is learning how to be themselves in the world own their truth. And maybe they'll figure out that sometimes when they own their truth in a certain way, other people's feelings get hurt."
Yep. You know what's amazing? Totally. And like, I would love, and my kids do have this with their grandparents, but that the kind of relationship where they can say it, and the grandparents are like,
Yeah.
"Cool, like now you got two," or like, "Well, let's return it." I have two kids. I have twins, and of various gender expressions. And I will tell you, my child who is assigned female at birth and is raised as a female, a girl, she has got some instinctive, not they're instinctive, they're learned behaviors around display rules that, and it's not just gender, it's also neurodiversity. Like my other kiddo, like is on the autistic spectrum, has a different kinds of just brain. That like if it's not logical, it's not happening. Like really, really confused about why we have to say thank you for everything.
Yeah.
And so I was sitting, I brought back my daughter, I brought her back a dessert from a trip. And I gave it to her, and we were sitting there eating it, and she was like, "I'm done." And she like always finishes the dessert. And I was like, "Okay." And I go in and I said something. I took a bite and I was like, "Oh, this tastes kind of funny." And I was like, "Is this cheesecake?" It was like a cake pop. I'm like, "Is it cheesecake?" And she goes, "Yes, I was afraid to tell you that I don't like cheesecake." And I was like, "What? You were afraid to tell me?" She was like, "I didn't want to make you upset."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
There we
like
go.
that was just a couple months ago.
There we go.
And Oren would have been like, "This sucks. I don't like this at all."
Flips the table.
Yeah, or just like, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a profound moment for me because I care so much about about having them not walk on eggshells and like, but there are, I do, we both do, come at them of ways of like, whenever either of them is just like, "I'm hungry." And I'm like, "I'm not your servant. Can you find a kinder way to express your need at this moment and maybe participate in solving the problem?" And so the other day she was like, "Okay, I don't know how to say this, but did you is this warmed up?" And I was like, "Oh my God, you're walking on eggshells because you know I'm gonna be like about how you say something."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like in defense of being childlike, I am here watching the evidence that like not no matter how much, I put a significant amount of effort into giving them emotional freedom and just like autonomy and just like letting them just be who they are. And still,
Yeah.
this happens.
Yeah.
It's real. It is an everyday battle. And the battle is mostly with myself. It's not really with them. It's mostly like, how am I sending the message that these things are not okay in ways that like don't work for child development, ideal child development.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so hesitant to like as I'm sitting with everything you just said, I'm like, shit, who am I to talk about this, right? I don't have kids. It's easy. Just be honest, right?
Right.
But
Right.
and so that's maybe why I was more interested in, as an adult, how do we, as children, we have such little power in a variety of dynamics, right? We just kind of have to do what the adults say a
Yeah.
lot of the time.
Yeah.
As adults, we get to unlearn whatever we don't like about what the adults said when we were kids. But first, you have to notice it, and then you have to want to change it, and then it's hard.
Yeah.
Um, and my gut is leaning more in the direction of honesty and saying what's inside as it comes out would probably help us correct back in the direction of a healthier equilibrium. Like we've overcorrected in the direction of politeness, in the direction of managing optics, in the direction of um, behaving in such a way that other people hold us in a certain light in their head. Like they, something I run into from time to time in my coaching is people who have worked with, and I'm starting to develop a dislike of executive coaches because I've talked to enough people who are like, yeah, I got executive coaching. And the gist of executive coaching was how to manage the way other people think about me and talk about me when I'm not in the room. It's about personal brand instead of just being yourself. It's about creating transactional, if I help you now, you'll help me later dynamics. Um, how do we get away from all of that shit and just show up as ourselves and feel okay in doing that? But doing it, like you said, in a boundaried way, in a way that's considerate, in a way that's honest, and it's kind to ourselves and to other people.
Yeah. Totally. How, so we've sort of established like it's helpful to unlearn some of these behaviors that we have overdeveloped that were at one point meant to keep us safe, but right now they just sort of separate us from our true selves and from like a life worth living. So how do we, like, what are the initial steps for like if you want to experiment with being more childlike, what do you do? How do you start?
Yeah. Yeah. First thing that comes to mind for me is, when is the last time you felt joy?
Hmm. To ask, are you asking me or to like, that would be a question.
I mean, I'm actually curious about you. When's the last time you felt joy?
I'm so grateful. Like often, like it's like it was just a couple of like it's going to the event and like, oh my God, like I met somebody at the let me tell you this quick story. I met somebody at this event who happens to be my neighbor, and she's like 23 or something. There's triplets on my block who I've never met. But one time her protein powder got delivered to my house. And I was like, I love people. And I wrote her like I've never met her before, wrote her a nice note, left it at her doorstep, went over to the house, put it on the doorstep, and then never heard from her. And
Nice.
today, blah 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 blah, and she was like, "I'm da da da," and oh, and I was like, "I'm a twin mom," and she was like, "Oh, I'm a triplet," and I'm like, "Are you da da? And do you live on this road?" And she was like, "Yes," and I was like, "I wrote you that note," and I was so thrilled. Like everybody around us was like, "What the fuck is going on with these people?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, it's me!" And she was like, "I love that note," and I was like, "I love your protein powder." It's just like, it was so fun. And then the other day, I was listening to a song that came on my Spotify, and it was called, um, the line was like, "If I get rabies, you're on my biting list." It's a country song, and I was like, "That's fucking hilarious!" And I burst out laughing to myself just in my car. And so, like, that was 2 days ago. So those are two examples of just like,
Yeah, you felt it and you let it out.
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember a time not so long ago, I was working at a tech startup where, like, the stereotypical everything is wrong tech startup scenario. Investors are pushing hard for better numbers. the economy is just not making it a feasible outcome to get those numbers. But because investors are putting on this pressure, the entire executive team starts behaving from a place of fear and scarcity that trickles down through the entire organization. Everybody feels stretched. Everybody's being asked to do the impossible, essentially, to do more with less, if you want to talk about it euphemistically. And I was so burnt out. I didn't know what depression was, as at least in terms of like work caused depression, because I think it's a different flavor of depression than depression from like um say like a relationship, right? They're different flavors. So like that languishing depression of my life has no meaning and I don't know why I'm doing this job on a day-to-day basis. I was towing that line. And so I went and started working with my coach, Meadow DeVore. And she asked me one day, she said, "When's the last time you felt joy?" And I literally could not remember. And part of the reason was if you don't allow yourself to feel all your emotions, you stop feeling emotions on both ends of the emotional spectrum. If you don't allow yourself to feel despair, grief, rage, because they come up on a daily basis and you can't operate that way, then you mute those. And those are on that end of the emotional spectrum. But then all of the emotions on the opposite of the end of the emotional spectrum, joy, wonder, go away too. So I was behaving in a way and coping in a way that led me to not have my outsides match my insides. My insides were raging and I was turning them off. I was muting them. And I was showing up as the guy who is supremely interested in KPIs and OKRs and EBITDA and also all these other, like 3-letter acronyms. That wasn't true. What I was actually interested in is how do I get back to a place where my life feels like it has meaning and it's worth living? So that's a display rule. You can't show up like that at work and expect to keep your job, is the narrative, right? When you want to keep your income, turn off who you actually are and present as this like corporate culture acceptable version of yourself.
What I'd offer, like, so the question of, can you name the last time you felt a kind of joy where it wasn't promoting joy. It wasn't like, yay, when's the next shoe gonna drop? Like, I did it. A cool thing happened, but like, who's looking or who's gonna judge me or da da. But like, true, just like dance like no one is watching, baby, kind of joy. That's one. So if you couldn't name it, like that's a sign that this might need some attention. And I'd offer as a second step to just notice yourself in situations when you want to control other people's perceptions of you or you're judging somebody. Just notice that it's happening and try to ask yourself, what would it feel like to let this be 10% more honest and uncomfortable? Just a little bit to like, okay, so for me, if I see Disney adults being Disney adults, what is the problem with just like letting that be true? Because that's joy. I remember at Smith College, Smith's tagline is heady, nerdy, and intellectually exciting. It's it's a bunch of a bunch of weirdos. We're a bunch of weirdos, nerds, weirdos. I loved it. I had a great time. I fit in great. Um, but I do remember our assistant dean, saying there was a spectrum of odd, and there was a spectrum of odd, and there were some like really out there behaviors in presentations, and there were cliques of people, and I'm not saying I wasn't one of them, but there were those people who were really like judgy about the like, I don't know, live action role playing kind of behavior, or like all kinds of like furries and all kinds of stuff that just like appeared on campus that were like new to folks who had grown up, for instance, in central New Jersey and had played sports and worn hoop earrings their whole life and like went to Catholic school where there were like very serious rules about how to display oneself. Um, but I do remember the assistant dean just being like, "What does it cost you to let people just be as themselves? They're happy.
Yeah.
What does it cost you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I should do a big group, and it will never leave me. Like that stuck with me, and that's what I think about when I think about how do you become a little more childlike is how do you just allow the people who are already doing it to do it without your judgment.
My inclination is to to instead of focusing externally on what other people are doing, to notice what's going on for you.
Yeah,
Right. So, and maybe that could be an excellent catalyst to notice what's
I would
going on for you. What is it about the way I think or feel that makes this so offensive to me? I think the question that comes to mind for me, for example, when you're considering how do I stop being polite? What are the uncomfortable emotions? What are the experiences you are avoiding by performing in some way, in a way that keeps your outsides from matching your insides? And if you were to have your outsides match your insides, what is the experience you would need to have?
yeah,
And then to welcome that experience in, even if it's just for like 10 seconds. Just notice what it feels like to, instead of resist it or hold it at arm's length or think of it as something that you could never do. Just allow yourself to have that experience on your own, in your room, by yourself.
just imagine it. Yeah,
Just welcome it in. Yeah, put yourself in that mind space and see what happens, right? And like actually love the opportunity to have that experience in this very controlled environment for a very small amount of time.
yeah. I mean, it requires so much awareness and courage to even get to that step, but highly encouraged to just imagine what it would be like for the thing that you fear to become true. Like people are going to judge you and think you're aggressive or like a bitch, or they're going to be think you're selfish.
Yeah.
What happens if people think you're selfish? That was a really hard one. That was a mountain to climb to me. So like the perception of selfishness, because that one carried so much baggage for me. And just to let that be true now that some people are either going to misunderstand me or appropriately understand me. And like sometimes the pathway to like my true self is paved with tiny bricks of selfishness.
I mean,
Sometimes.
I'm being selfish. What's wrong with being selfish?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's a big one? Yeah. What is wrong with being selfish? Like there's lots of things we could say that are wrong with being selfish, but in the end, if that selfishness is something that is balanced with like an experience of bringing other people and yourself towards either a greater good, a fuller, authentic expression of yourself, what we call selfishness is often just being able to have needs that are in conflict with other people. And once you dig into that, you realize, like, oh, we have just been calling selfish these behaviors that are truly life saving, that are truly like help us become the people that we are meant to become. It's just really uncomfortable for other people who haven't given themselves that permission. And so it gets labeled as selfish.
The thing, and so I asked that question with an agenda, and I'll say what the agenda was. I think we are all selfish all the time.
Oh, even when we're being like super not selfish, it's just
Like
about,
everything we do, like why do I eat? Because I don't want to feel hungry anymore. Because I want to live. Because like why do I want to be warm? Because I don't like feeling cold. Like anything we want to do is in service to ourselves. Even things that we do that are completely self-sacrificing and we do them willingly and joyfully, We do them willingly and joyfully because as we sacrifice our whatever, our peace of mind, our rest, our bodies, we are giving of ourselves to something that we value greatly. Altruism is a selfish behavior. It feels good to do nice things for other people.
Mhm.
It might also be a valuable thing to do for other people, but I would present that framework. What does it look like to just recognize that the human condition is one of being selfish? And there's a difference between being selfish and being selfish to the exclusion of other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being selfish to the exclusion of other people or being abusive of other people in your selfishness, that's a specific scenario in which selfishness plays out. That's not okay, but it has nothing to do with being selfish inherently. It has to do with the fact that you are harming others. So really the thing that's the problem is a lack of external considering, not being selfish.
Yeah. Which is why I will die on the boombox at the beach hill. I will.
There's a lack of external considering and you're the external.
My experience account. I get it. Everybody wants to jam. Okay, let me try this out. I am hungry, thirsty, tired, and brain dead, and I want to stop podcasting. Can we stop?
Hell yeah, let's call it.
Cool. This is great. This is fun. Let's go be kids.
Yeah. Yeah, have fun.
All right, friends of the pod out there. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you.
Night.